Hi, this is John Blake. I'm the director here at the Miami University Center for Community Engagement in Over the Rhine, and excited to have the Storefronts Community Arts team here today. And when I took over as director about 5 years ago, one of the first things I did was text MC Reitz to talk about how we can activate our storefront here at 1300 Vine. We have a lot of glass and a lot of sidewalk right outside. We're on the corner. So our first move was, how do we activate that glass? There's so much that's been going on inside at the center, and frankly, there's a lot going on outside of our window in the neighborhood. So we saw this series as a means of activating that thin layer of glass between the neighborhood and the center. So with that, here's MC and the Storefronts team, and they'll self-introduce. And we're so glad you're here to learn more about the Storefronts Community Arts Series.
Hello, everyone. My name is Mary Claire Reitz. You can go by MC. And I have served as the facilitating artist for Storefronts since its inception, like John just shared. And so I'm really excited to with the folks from Over the Rhine with whom I collaborate to produce these artworks, the Storefronts team, to share with you today a little bit about our work. And by now it's been 5 years, and we've really gathered quite a body of work. So first of all, just to give a brief introduction, we're a neighborhood-based collaborative. We're based at the Miami U Center for Community Engagement. Most of us are not trained artists, but we believe in the human capacity for creativity, and that our lived experience really puts us in a great position to make the work that we do. So we're really grounded in those beliefs, and we produce artworks that directly address what's happening in our neighborhood. And we see art as a way to invite other neighbors, other folks from around the city to work with us as we kind of engage with and struggle with the issues that impact our life together there in Over the Rhine and beyond. So our work is grounded in a field that my guess is 95 to 98% of you have never heard of, but it's a very vibrant, energetic field within fine art called socially engaged art. And it has grown up over some decades, and it's really firmly rooted in a whole bunch of different aspects of our social and political and cultural life together. It has art, roots. It has political roots. It has connections to the internet, to policy, all kinds of aesthetic and cultural movements, phenomena over the ages have kind of come together to create this field of art. That, what is it about? What is it? What are we talking about when we talk about socially engaged art? My favorite definition is by a socially engaged artist and writer named Ted Purvis. And he talks about the endeavor of socially engaged art as sort of moving into even creating a space of encounter. And when we go look at art, that is an encounter, right? It's an encounter with the artwork. But in this case, we're talking about encountering another person, nature, in a way that our experiences really affected, changed, maybe even overtaken by the presence of that other, whoever that the one we're encountering might be. So I like to simplify this and say that socially engaged art is the art of the encounter, meeting another, maybe accompanying another, um, perhaps challenging another. There's a whole vibrant field, as I said, of folks who are making this kind of art. Socially engaged art often doesn't look like traditional art. Often it looks like performance. Sometimes it looks like people doing policy. Other times it's meetings. It might be work around community histories, archives, for example. A Blade of Grass is a great organization to look at if you want to just get a bunch of examples of really the socially engaged artists who are at the top of our field. This is a screenshot from the website, but you can go and click on any one of these, and there are just awesome short videos that highlight work of these folks going back from 2020 back a good number of years. And I do believe Miami is going to share the web links to a number of different things that I'm going to refer to through this presentation here, and including A Blade of Grass. So that'll be cool. So we locate ourselves in this field of socially engaged art. We meaning the Storefronts Art Collaborative. And here's an awesome team photo from 2019 when we put on a really interesting work that you're going to see a little bit later for Blink. But wanted to just kind of pause now and open it up for some conversation with the Storefronts team, give you all who are our viewers the opportunity to meet them, and so let's start some conversation among us. Storefronts folks, we've made artworks every year, sometimes multiple artworks a year since 2017. What's one that stands out for you? And we have practices that we do together as Storefronts. When we start a meeting, often we have a prompt as a way to gather ourselves in with one another. So let's use that practice and share one word that describes your experience of that artwork that stands out for you, and briefly why that one word. Miss Janet, do you want to start us off?
Sure, thank you. I think, first of all, I'm sorry. I am Janet Albright Captain. I am a resident of the Overrun community and also a public school educator. One of the pieces of artwork that stands out for me was the very first one that I participated in, which was visual. Um, the one word that I would describe as my experience within visual would be power. Um, and the reason why I chose the word power is because a lot of times um, um, people look at silence as being submissive. Um, and this was uh, the opposite. The silence that we um, produce in visual was very powerful, very meaningful, very effective. Um, and I think that that will forever stand out for me, uh, that piece of artwork. Um, Miss June, what about you?
Um, the word that I would use is everything. Art is in everything. There isn't anything we don't do or can't do that isn't about art. The way we walk, the way we stand, our birth, our death, everything is based on the principles and elements of art. How we make dishes, how we make food. And the greatest thing for me is about art is the masterpiece of the human being, of the human form, of the human journey, of the human joy. There, we cannot live, breathe, eat anything without already being artists. The idea that there is trained and untrained artists, I question that because I have seen the women and the men when they're on the dance floors and when they fall in love. To me, just the birds singing, that's already art, my darling. I say, Key,
Yes,
what do you
so
think, darling?
thank you, Miss June, for tagging me. If you don't know, my name is Quebec. My pronouns are they, them, there, and I've been an over the Rhine resident for 10 years or so, and so I am really excited to be part of Storefronts. I think that it is really given me an opportunity to share my voice, which is probably why my favorite project so far has been Threshold, which was this project where we had doors that were kind of serving as this threshold between private life and community life. And so I really appreciated that project because it was really influential to hear stories. And so my word is actually storytelling, because oftentimes we move through communities, we move through spaces, and we never actually have conversations with each other. We never talk to each other. And I almost feel like, especially now with COVID, we've almost trained ourselves to avoid each other. And
Mhm.
so for me, sometimes sharing a story is a way of entree, a way of understanding. And so storytelling is definitely one word that has always really, in my opinion, has been throughout the work that we do. How do you tell the stories of folks who don't always have a voice, or maybe they just need that space yielded for them? And so storytelling would be a word that describes Threshold. And I think that I would love to hear, Bonnie, what do you think? What is your opinion?
Thanks, Key. Um, well, first of all, I've been a longtime resident activist and really love being a part of Storefronts because you get a chance to get to know other neighborhood residents, I think, at a deeper level, participating in these projects together. And then just that collective creativity that we're able to come up with when we're trying to figure out, what we're going to do next. And I think it's hard for me to pick a favorite one, but the one that I think it was kind of unusual for me was one that I had to act in, and we called it Wonderland, and it was where we had a developer, our community council president, and we had a city council person, and then just a neighborhood resident, which I was acting. And I think that evening I let out some just anger about what was happening in our community around displacement and gentrification and just being able to have that voice, because I know sometimes when we go to city hall or other places like that, you have to kind of tone down some of those that anger. But it was an evening where I think that the audience could experience the depth of what we were feeling and experiencing in our neighborhood about losing our neighbors, and then not being able to really have a lot to say about who's making the decisions about our community. And I think that came across well in being able to act that out, and the audience being able to hear this variety of voices. So that evening was I'd say the word bold. I want to say we were able to be bold that night about what we were experiencing as a community. So I'm going to pick on Jeremy next. What did you love? What project, Jeremy?
Well, all of them, Bonnie. But having to thank you, having to pick one, maybe before I get into that, I'm Jeremy Neff. Moved into the neighborhood I think 6 years ago, but before that lived in the West End, so about a block or two out of Over the Rhine proper. And that really actually feeds into my favorite, which is also Vigil. So I'm right there with you, Miss Janet. I think Vigil was incredibly powerful. The word I have doesn't really connect entirely to why I loved it so much, but with Vigil, we were standing there in the storefronts, and I think there may have been some images that have been or will be shared about it. And standing in the storefront talking about kind of something that we were maybe worried for or hopeful for the preservation of or mourning the loss of in the neighborhood. And for me, disruptive was the word. You couldn't walk down the street without being drawn into it. And, I don't think everybody, stood and cheered necessarily, but they couldn't help but notice it and pause for a moment to think about it. And part of why that was meaningful for me is I think it was incredibly effective. It was also my first project with the group. And when my family, we've got 3 little girls, so you may hear them in the hallway. I've occupied their playroom, as you can see, and their art room, as you can see. Part of the reason we moved into the neighborhood is we'd lived here in Cincinnati for over a decade. And even though this was the neighborhood we were always drawn to for church and for arts and for the market, it always felt like I was an outsider, even though I was a couple of blocks away. And it was so powerful for me to be a part of this group and to really feel that, that this is my neighborhood. And that's all I have to say on that one.
All right, thank you all. We all just got a chance to hear from the artists about some of the artworks that they felt that impacted them. So let's take a look at some of the works that we've produced together as Storefronts. As you've heard, our very first was Vigil in the fall of 2017. And so now you're seeing some of the imagery from the live performance that night. It was Final Friday. We had 11 neighborhood artist performers inside the space, and they were taking turns one at a time, one would move out of the space and one would move into this window space, holding placards that they had made in workshops that we held prior, and holding vigil for, like Jeremy and Miss Janet said, for what their mourning has been lost, what they're hopeful for, what they see is missing. And meanwhile, inside the space, there were readings being read, interspersed by moments of silence. People walking down the street were so taken that some just walked in. They didn't know what it was, but they were so drawn in by this powerful, I suppose, spectacle. In addition to the live performance, we had portraits. So each artist performer had a portrait taken. And in the weeks following, we had these displayed in our storefronts windows. And then we happened to be invited on the road. Another community art center up in Madisonville learned about our program and invited our portrait images to be on exhibit there as part of a bigger art event that was actually put on by the symphony. And then because it was the symphony, some folks involved in the symphony saw it, and they were so taken, they asked if 3 of the portraits could be displayed at Music Hall, which they were for a couple of weeks. So again, kind of going back a little bit to share a little bit about how we work. Our work is supported by the students at the center, by Miami University students. and professors. And so there's kind of a really awesome back and forth that happens where we're developing artistic ideas and ideas for how we want to express and respond to issues in the neighborhood. And then we have students who help us design things that support, whatever it is that we're going to produce. And I'll point some of that out as I share some more of the works. So as John said, a lot of our work is in that space and has been behind those windows, but as the years have gone on, a lot of our work has started to spill out into the neighborhood, either on the sidewalk right in front, at a little pocket park half a block up called Imagination Alley, all kinds of different things, right there in our neighborhood community. Radio was our second artwork that we produced in that same year, 2017, where pairs of neighborhood folks interviewed each other. They came up with their own questions, burning questions that they wanted to ask each other. It wasn't actually broadcast on the radio, but it was broadcast out to the street. And the participants also chose a song that they wanted to give as a gift to their interview partner, and so we played that music as well. It was right there up in the front, in the front window, so that was pretty cool, kind of like a radio station. And the students designed you see the on air, they designed that, helped us with the sound and recording and all of that. Bonnie talked about Wonderland. That was 2018, and this was, as she said, a performance of the experience of different stakeholder groups when they come to the proverbial table around a proposed neighborhood development project. And we talked about the differences in power and access of the different parties when they come around that table. And so with that in mind, the students designed this interesting sort of sculptural piece that represented that table that had different levels, different textures. We turned that object for different scenes. The video, there's a 15-minute video that is a video recording of the live performance. And the link to the video is also going to be made available to you on the web page that Miami is setting up for this presentation, and also some emails that you may be getting in the weeks to come. So take a look at that. It's pretty powerful, as Bonnie says. Time for an update was our participation in Blink 2019. It consisted of an animated video projection onto the side of the building where we're located. At the building where we are at 13th and Vine and Over the Rhine is called Buddy's Place, in honor of the memory and the work of longtime activist Buddy Gray. And so the image on the left, if it's on the left on your screen, of the Buddy's Place mural, that mural is there. It's been there for a couple of decades, I believe, but that night it was animated by an artist that we collaborated with. So the wheels were spinning, the flowers were moving a bit, and then above where you see Key's image was our animated video, and much of the artwork for that was produced by the Storefronts team of that year, and then the artist that we collaborated with helped produce the animation. On my screen on the lower right is Miss Janet, and you see we had a live performance component where the Storefronts folks were dressed. We collaborated with the fashion design department of another institution, and they produced these LED lit outfits for us, and then the Storefronts folks each made their own sign. We lit everything was lit And every night they came out, and it was sort of a performance of a protest. In 2020, the fall of 2020, and then into the first part of 2021, we did a project that was a first for us. We were invited, we were asked at the prompting of a member of the Over the Rhine Community Council, who recommended to 3CDC that they engage us to do a community engagement input process with neighborhood people to listen to what they would want in the redesign and redevelopment of the small pocket park I referenced earlier called Imagination Alley. It's just a little bit up from 13th and Vine on the opposite side of the street. And that's a park that neighborhood people use every single day, especially the people who live immediately adjacent in the apartments right there. So we designed and facilitated a process that invited them to share what it is that they would want to see in the redesign of that park. And so we took their input. There was a lot of sort of beautiful repetition in the different things that people asked for, and we created this work of poetry that we then performed, and that is also a video that you can access in the list of web links that Miami's going to provide you. So moving now to what we are up to these days, this year. This is a very exciting, again, a new opportunity that we've not had before. Our current work in progress is called People Moving, and it'll be part of a show at the Contemporary Art Center called Artist Run Spaces. And that is going to be a group show that features different artist-run groups, not only from Cincinnati, but around the region. And so we are currently developing our installation for that. We're calling it People Moving. One of the things that we do when we do a lot of talking as the Storefronts team. We talk with each other, we listen, we sort of converse our way into what it is that we want to show and share. And so what you see here is the main themes or concepts that we decided that we want to present in the People Moving art installation at the CAC. And this artwork specifically engages with the Over the Rhine People's Movement, which is a 50-year grassroots movement. And it engages with the archive materials of that movement. So photographs, newspapers, slogans, all the things that over all these years that are sort of the material signs of the struggle that people have engaged in over all these decades and over the Rhine to push for justice, housing, affordability, access to public space, all of these things. And our primary concept, what we really want to challenge visitors to see is to see those people specifically that are often rendered unseen in redeveloped urban centers. So let's take a moment to kind of, take a break from the slides again and talk a little bit more as the Storefronts group. So again, People Moving is about this 50-year movement within the neighborhood. It's our artistic response to the archive, to the photos, to the protest posters, flyers, kind of gathering those things up and using them as inspiration and as material. Usually archives are shared as like a historic exhibit or maybe in a library or an academic setting. So the next thing that I wanted to kind of, invite us to talk about is, why do we feel that art is an effective way for us to share this archive with the public? And Bonnie, as the longest time resident and activist in our group, would you like to?
Yeah, I'll start us off. I don't know, for as long as I've been around here, the people here have used art to express themselves. You know, that whole thing about a step out of oppression is expression. And I think it just comes naturally, because when you're in the heat of a struggle, if it's trying to save your school, trying to save your park, your pool, not wanting trees to be torn down in your community or save your housing, it stirs something in your heart and your soul that you want to express, and it oftentimes doesn't come out to like a speech. It might come out through a poem. Our people have done street theater. They've created songs from using maybe some black soul music that was sung in the civil rights movement, and we changed words to demonstrate, where we are, what we're struggling with right now. So it's, yeah, poetry and music and art, and just even children have done some creative things, using their crayons on poster board to express how they might feel. So I think it's can be impactful, and when you see when we're using those expressions, we're hoping that people are able to hear, to see, to feel what it is to be about trying to improve things in our community. So I think art is just uh, a different way of trying to appeal to the public to try to hear our perspective, so that we are respected, and that our needs do get met by the broad public. So Key, what do you think about art? How art is effective?
I think that is a really good question, because I think about art as almost as a way of leveling a playing field. And what I mean by that is that oftentimes we all have barriers, or we all have something that we want to advocate for, or maybe we have something that we want to save, right? Or maybe we have something that we want to communicate. And we can't always say that we have the same language. Like, I may speak, African American vernacular English. Someone else may speak Spanish. But what I can say about art is something that we all can create, that is a language that we can kind of all understand. So I've been in art projects within the community where folks will say something like, well, I don't know, I don't feel like an artist. Or they'll say something like, well, I don't know if I could go to City Hall and tell them how I feel about gentrification. But I found that if we have a conversation around what words come to mind, what feelings are evoked, what images do you miss, what images would you like to see, they somehow find a voice. They find images, words, pictures, feelings, things that can help communicate that to each other. And so for me, art is literally the leveling playing field that allows expression to be heard, understood, seen. And it's something that, even on its basic level, whether you give a little 1-year-old a crayon, as Bonnie was talking about, or you have someone who's hyper educated in art, they all can meet somewhere in the middle and understand each other through common images, feelings, expressions, colors. And so for me, that is something that art does. And so I would love to hear from Miss June. What do you think around art being a way for expression and expressing things?
Thank you, Key. Art throughout history has been a powerful weapon. It frightens the status quo sometimes. That is why Hitler burned and hid great works of art. That is why we have people from Africa today, African Americans, are still discovering what they brought to the table many, many, many centuries ago. It is why even women do not understand the beauty of themselves. When you take that power away from a group of people, then they don't own their own roots. They don't own their own history. They do not own their own dreams. And this is a tool and a weapon to oppress from the very beginning. But once you discover, like I once discovered the Venus of Willendorf, and I looked at that big old woman and said, "Ooh, she looks like me. You used to worship me, baby. I just, oh, the blossom in me, the shine in me, honey." And that just all of that magic of knowing I am one of the greatest creations ever made keeps me fighting, keeps me living, keeps me looking at myself no matter how everybody else sees me. Honey, I know what I am. I am the earth and the goddess herself. I'm going to call in Jeremy because I think being a father is an amazingly necessary work of art as well.
Man, always an intimidating person to follow, but a great leader for our group. Thank you so much. Yeah, I think the effectiveness of art is, a lot of it is on the side of the artists, I think, whether we're talking about leveling the playing field, the empowerment and the attack on power and people in positions of power. I think it's also, from an audience perspective, it can be disarming. And that can be really important when we're talking about some challenging topics. And maybe I'm projecting a little bit because, there are a lot of times when I feel like I could be that person we're talking about, right? And that needs to hear these messages. And I'm thankful to be a part of this group to hear them and be a part of them this way. But that disarming element of art, I think it's the same reason that a few days ago we were celebrating the 75th anniversary of Jackie Robinson and baseball. And when you go just next to the thing you're talking about, I think it can allow people to relax, that really need to hear the message and be and I think that's what our art can do. And I think, looking to the project at the Contemporary Art Center, I'm very hopeful that that's the effect of it. Well, I'm going to pass it on to, speaking of impacting people and having an audience, I'm going to pass it on to our teacher here, Miss Janet.
Thanks, Jeremy. You all said so much about it. And I totally agree with everything. Only thing that I guess I want to add to that, I guess in a different way, is that when I think of the effectiveness of how we can engage people within this archive, I think that it's a way of drawing people in that otherwise maybe wouldn't come in through the archives, through the pictures, through some of the wording, and it's not someone speaking because the art itself is speaking. And I think that could be a powerful way of sharing with the public as well. It's just when I think about it, and I was thinking about this question. So when I think about it, I think about like some of the old pictures that we see, which is artwork as well, and then those meanings behind those pictures. Some people wouldn't think like when they think about pictures of people being homeless or people being deprived of certain things as and when they have those captions and they take those images that's not art, but it is, because it's silently telling a story that needs to be heard. So when I think about this, I think that this is the best way that we could do it, is through that art that's silently telling a story that really needs to be heard by all.
Awesome. Thank you all. It's really powerful to hear. One of the things that's been powerful for me as facilitating artists is to work with all of you over these years and together grow into an understanding of what it is that we're doing with this art. what is it that we're doing with art as a way to engage community? And I think we're working ourselves into a deeper and wider and more profound understanding as we go. So to return to the slides, I want to just share kind of a sneak peek of some of the kinds of imagery that you might see if you come to the Contemporary Art Center and see our People Moving exhibit sometime between May 27th and September 11th. A lot of posters from over the years, protests that have been used in protests. You're going to see, signs of use, signs of age, signs of having been handled. These are things that were, used to, like you've just heard folks talk about, to put forth the protest, the needs, the desires, the struggles, the grief, the anger, the hope, the vision, the beauty, the love that this movement is about. And I know, Bonnie, you have talked about, and maybe it was you and Buddy, I heard you talk about how, this movement is really about love.
Mm-hmm. Radical love.
And so, we can look at these images of this struggle and these various struggles over the years for, folks who need housing, fighting for them to have housing, folks who need access to public space, fighting for them to have access to public space. And undergirding all of that is this profound connection and a decision to love thy neighbor. So, even something simple like, a phone call sheet to turn people out for a protest. These are the little connective pieces that, over all these days, months, years, decades have created this movement. Sorry about that. So, lots of voicing, lots of coming together, lots of folks from all different backgrounds coming together to call for what is good and right and to be seen. And so this is from Vigil. This is Miss Elizabeth Burnside's portrait from our 2017 artwork Vigil. And her portrait will be featured in our People Moving installation at the CAC. I mentioned that we do a lot of talking when we make our work. We sort of talk our way into what it is that we want to do. And so these are just some notes of some conversations that we had about what we wanted to make visual in our installation. And then, we have some great help from Miami U students and architecture professors to help us visualize what this might be. And so this is what we're working with now as our design. Again, more conversation, talking about moving. The title of the work is People Moving. So we're talking about the objects in the show should be moving. We should, people should be, the objects in the exhibits should help people feel like they're walking with, they're walking among. Things are constantly turning and changing. So these are all ideas that folks really wanted to include. The sunflower is a central motif in the people's movement, the idea of people rising up and coming together. And so that will be a motif in our work. And so, you know, to round out our conversation, or to come together in a final conversation. So, you know, our last show, our current show, our upcoming show, is people moving, and we've talked about what it means to be moved from all the different perspectives of what that word means. But we do want to move people. We want to move them to feel something, to understand something, to maybe take action, to do something different from what they've done or seen or felt or understood in the past. We want to move people. So I just would open it up again, my Storefronts collaborators, to inquire with you over these 5 years, what is something that has moved you as a community artist? Hugh, do you want to kick us off?
Sure. And I'm thankful that these 5 years have really encouraged me to think about movement in multiple ways. And so I think one thing I like to think about movement is movement like in actual space, right? And so one thing that working with Storefronts has encouraged me to do is move throughout my community. And as I kind of talked about before, conversations are important, stories are important. So actually moving through the community and talking with people in the community. I think that even many of us who have lived here for a while, we can sometimes get in that rut of trying to get from A to B, that we forget about all the people who are along the way that we can have these conversations with. And so this current project is going to literally allow us to look into the past and have conversations with people through the past, through their artwork, through the things that they produced, and then have current conversations with folks who are visiting, with patrons who are seeing that art. And so it doesn't have to necessarily be a conversation, you know, that's happening from person to person, but actually engaging the art as presented. And so it's really kind of challenged me to move in my perspective of how I move through the community. And it's challenged me to kind of move in the way in which what I consider art and how art can affect other folks. Because I think the old me would have never thought that someone making a protest sign would be art. But now the new me sees that, you know, this is an expression of a feeling, of an emotion, of a conversation, which is exactly what makes it art. And so I really moved in how I understand the way that we all can be participatory artists and do social practice. And so I am really interested if this is something similar or different from what you've seen, felt, Miss Janet. What moves you, or what has moved you in these past years of doing this work?
Yes. Thanks, Key. I think for me, it has been the 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 coming out of me saying that, hey, I'm not an artist, you know, and like you said, looking at it in a different perspective, like, oh, okay, um, didn't know that, right? Um, and so, and then the other part of it is introducing that same concept to people within the community. For example, when we were over in Imagination Alley, and we were introducing art as a way of expressing what they would like to see, what expressing or exercising their voice, right? And it's just it's almost like each one teach one for real. Um, to to spread it and to say that, hey, art is not just, right? It's so much more, so much bigger than. Uh, so I think for me, that would be the biggest that I have um, taken from being quote unquote community artist. Yes, I know. So how about you, Bonnie?
Well, I first want to say you all move me, each one of you. Just the experience of participating in a group that's creating collectively and being open to each other's perspective has moved me. And I want to bring up Tony Drummond. I think witnessing Tony uh, going over to Imagination Alley, having conversation, and his conversations to me were a work of art with his neighbors. I mean, he put aside that survey that we were trying to do, and he did it his own cultural way. And we lost Tony. He passed away, and I just really miss him. But just seeing his involvement um, as a resident at Buddy's Place, being performing in that the Blink one, I forget what we named that one, and then just his and with his health challenges that he had during this whole time that he kept going, that moved me greatly. And then with all of us experiencing the pandemic, how we've been isolated, and then being able to have that hold that outside stuff where we were able to engage with people in the community, how important just being present with one another, and taking the time to listen and feed back to folks what it was that we heard, how important that listening skill is, and having our neighborhood people feel respected and heard is valuable. And this in this group and doing this work of art, I think it's part of our principle that we do that. So yeah, you all move me. So I will, Jeremy, what do you have to say?
You stole it, Bonnie. I do think those conversations with each other, and so many stand out. One, kind of going to the idea of coming out, not coming out of, but the summer of 2020, and not really being sure, how I was supposed to interact with the world. And we had the Black Liberation installations in the storefront, and we've has been a part of our group in the past, had done some pieces, and there was one in particular that was really powerful. And part of the nice thing about being an artist with this group, I think it invites me to ask questions, and sometimes they're dumb questions, but it's fairly safe. We've built that relationship through all the conversations. And so I said something to her about, like, wow, like, this is like ripped from the headlines, and had a conversation about that piece. And she's like, Jeremy, the thing is, I made that like 5 years ago. And, that was, a powerful thing for me to hear, because, I mean, obviously, we're a diverse group with different experiences, and to be able to, kind of get a better appreciation, a wider experience of what it means to be a part of our community is a huge part of what moves me, being a part of this group. So with that, I think we got Miss June. What about you?
Oh, thank you, Jeremy. Art for me is life. It's probably when I was painting in my studio, was the only time I didn't eat. It was a time that the world disappears. But art does something when you look at all the different cultures. One thing will settle for you, for all of us in art, that we really aren't as different as we want to think we are. It is the one key is right. It is the great equalizer. It tells us we have the same hopes, for our children, the same dreams. We all want freedom. We all want to love and be loved. You can go on nearly every continent and you will find pyramids. You will find, even in Alabama right now, they're digging up artifacts that were there from Africa. You will see migration and the idea that mothers still wanted this and fathers still wanted this. And the fact that that simple little rainbow, simple little colors mean so much, that we all have them. And one of the things I say, this isn't a black thing, as an artist, white is zero. In the color theory, white doesn't really exist. We all have many, many colors in us. And if we maybe just embraced art, work, did more, like Bonnie said, she got out that anger in art instead of picking up a gun. Maybe pick up a brush, maybe get some clay, maybe, no, maybe, I know. If we sang and danced more, rejoice more, and use our arts and our humanities and the beauty what we have been already been given, even from the little straw dolls back in the day, even coming into a museum and seeing an art museum in a different way. For me, it's church. But we have allowed something to take the masterpiece of creation out of us. Inozaki says, Shange says, in one of her plays, one of her writings, I found God in myself and I loved her fiercely. I say that about art. I found art in myself and I loved all of them fiercely.
Thank you.
I'm going to say, am I the last one? Thank you, Kay.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, what better last words could there possibly be? Thank you, Miss June, so much. So thanks everyone for, thank you, my Storefronts collaborators, for this conversation. And thank you, John Blake, for texting me in the summer of 2017 and saying, big idea, what if we started an art program?
I assure you, the idea wasn't as big as what we have in front of us today. I couldn't have imagined how this was moved forward by you and the students and the people in our community.
It's an invitation, though. I mean, the invitation, that was key.
Yeah. So, heartfelt thanks to you all. And for those of you who would like to catch the People Moving installation, it'll be part of the Artist Run Spaces series at the Contemporary Arts Center. And that opens on May 27th. So we've got some work to do. And it goes all the way through the summer until September 11th, 2022. And one feature of that event is that a lot of the exhibits, including ours, will have periodic gatherings. So in our case, for the People Moving show, we will have talks with People's Movement leaders on Thursdays at 5:30 p.m. And it'll be on the following Thursdays, July 14th, August 11th, and September 8th. So just before the end of the show, talk about getting the last word in. Perhaps we'll do that again. So I'd encourage anyone out there who's in Cincinnati to come check it out. And we certainly thank anyone out there watching for joining us and hearing about our exciting work in the Storefronts Arts Series. And once again, thank you to all of you for, putting up with us and all the emails and Zooming on this for well over a year, and for all of your wonderful productions.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.